Good morning. Welcome to the United States Sports Academy and our weekly sports talk program. With me today is two of our wonderful doctoral teaching assistants, Mr. Ben Billman to my right and Mr. Jason Williams to my left. Jason Williams, a former college football player at University of Idaho, right?
Yes, sir.
The Vandals. Today we're going to talk a little bit about college football. By the way, I'm Steve Butler, I'm your host, and Sarah, our producer, is behind the camera as usual. Today we're going to talk about college football. Most of the teams have played 3 games, and the regular season is now 12 games, so they're basically 1/4 of the way through the season. And we thought we'd talk a little bit about where we are now compared to where we were in the preseason polls. I had a student who did a research project for his dissertation, and for the last 25 years, it can be statistically proven that if you take the final poll from the previous season, it's more accurate than the preseason polls each year. So that was kind of, and by a long shot, a lot more accurate. So that, of course, Alabama being number 1 wouldn't be any different, but from there on down it would be different. So we started out the year with Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma, FSU, and LSU as the top 5. Now we have Alabama, Ohio State, Louisville, Michigan, and Clemson. So Alabama and Clemson are the only 2 schools that are still in the top 5 that start out the season in the top 5. So I'll start with you, Jason. What so far in the first 3 weeks has been the biggest surprise to you?
Louisville 63-20 over Florida State, and Houston likewise over Oklahoma. Those are the big shockers for me. Everything else, with the exception, I did not see Wisconsin beating LSU. But everything else, I think it's played out how I thought it would. But those are the 2 big ones for me.
Yeah, I agree with Louisville. Just domination over Florida State.
Yeah.
That was a phenomenal game to watch. The other thing is just the collapse of the Big 12.
Yeah.
At this point, there's really no hope for a team in the Final Four unless maybe Oklahoma if they win out, but even then they have 2 losses. The top teams are Baylor, West Virginia, Texas, TCU, but none of those teams really look to me, at least right now, as a college football playoff team. So I think the Big 12 is in big trouble.
Baylor's the only one that's undefeated, right?
Yes.
So if they go 12-0, maybe. But one thing that's hurt Baylor a great deal the last couple of years is they have probably the worst non-conference schedule in the country. They don't play anybody non-conference. In fact, I think we might be playing them. The Sports Academy might be playing them next week, and we don't even have a team. Yeah, I think that, to be honest with you, Houston was not a surprise. I picked Houston in my top 5 preseason, and I thought they would beat Oklahoma. And if you look back to last year, they had thumped Florida State in the bowl game. So in 2 consecutive games, they beat Florida State and Oklahoma handily, 2 of their perennial powers. I thought Louisville had a chance to beat Florida State, and I may have had, for entertainment purposes only, a little bit of action on the over-under for that game. And the over-under was 68.5, and I was very confident that the 2 teams combined would score 69 points. But when I won the bet, I didn't think it was going to be 63-10, because that was a touchdown that put me over 69. I never dreamed that at that point it would be 63-10. What about a surprise going the other direction? Ben, I'll start with you this time.
Notre Dame has looked very poor. To lose at Texas, and then Texas last week lost to Cal, so that looks bad. And then losing at home to Michigan State, who's rebuilding, that really looks bad for Notre Dame, especially after the success they've had the last few seasons and the expectations moving forward with Brian Kelly as the head coach. I don't know where that program is going now. If they're going to keep dropping, maybe they'll come back this year, but their college football playoff chances for this year are done. So,
Jason?
2 teams that have surprised me are Iowa. Iowa lost to
North Dakota
North
State.
Dakota State. That's a Rose Bowl team last year. And then LSU is really poor. They barely beat Mississippi State. I do believe they're going to get beat by Auburn this weekend. perhaps handedly. I think Auburn's going to rally, and I think Les Miles. This may be the last straw.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, Auburn, both of the, that game could be 9-6 with 5 field goals because neither one of those offenses have been overly impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the pundits will build up as a typical SEC awesome defensive struggle when it's really two inept offenses. I'm an SEC guy, but I think the SEC is way overrated when it comes to college football. You can see that in the preseason poll. We had Alabama, LSU, Tennessee, Ole Miss. All 4 of those teams were in the top 11, and now LSU is down to 18. Ole Miss, for some reason, is still ranked at 23 with a 1-2 record, and Tennessee, even though they've won, has dropped 5 places in the rankings because they should have lost to Appalachian State.
Mm-hmm.
That game they should have lost.
Yeah.
If they would have lost to Appalachian State, it would have been right up there with North Dakota State and Iowa. And that's 6 years in a row that North Dakota State has beaten FBS team, a Division 1A is what we knew it as, a Division 1A team. I think one of the other things that's interesting, if you look at the preseason poll, we have Notre Dame, TCU, UCLA, Iowa, USC, Oklahoma State, North Carolina, and Oregon, who are all ranked in the top 25 in the preseason poll, who are no longer ranked.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and then on the other hand, we have Texas A&M, Wisconsin, Miami, Nebraska, Texas, San Diego State, and Utah, who are not ranked in the preseason poll, who are in the top 25. Texas A&M all the way up to number 10, and Wisconsin up to number 11 after 3 weeks. And we've got San Diego State, who's up to number 22. I saw where they actually have the second longest winning streak in the country right now, behind only Alabama.
Aren't they coming here?
Yeah, next week, October 1st, 7 o'clock at Ladd-Peebles Stadium, playing the University of South Alabama Jaguars. The one thing I can't believe is that that's not the ABC primetime game. For some reason, they chose Louisville at Clemson over San Diego State and South Alabama, but I guess they have their reasons. I'll actually be at that game. We're taking our Chinese students to see a college football game, and when we made the decision to go, we didn't realize that San Diego State was really that good. It's also the Hall of Fame game for South Alabama, so they'll be introducing their Hall of Fame players. Going forward this week, next week there's some really good games. I mentioned Clemson and Louisville next week, and actually 2 of the real surprise teams to some folks, Houston and Louisville. I think they play it's either week 8 or week 9. They actually play each other, and we talked earlier in the season if Louisville wins the ACC and Oklahoma wins the Big 12 and Houston goes undefeated, there's no way you can keep them out of the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think.
Yeah.
And they look good They played last Thursday night against Cincinnati. The score was a little misleading because they had 2 pick sixes in the last 5 minutes, but they pretty much handled everything that Cincinnati threw at them. So what, Ben? I asked you to come up with the 5 key games this week. What did you come up with?
Yeah, I met with Jason and we talked about it and we came to an agreement. Wisconsin at Michigan State. I think that's going to determine a lot in the Big Ten. Florida's playing at Tennessee in the SEC East. That is the matchup for the season. Arkansas at Texas A&M. 2 surprise teams so far, and that could really determine who's going to challenge Alabama in the SEC West. Clemson at Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is undefeated, and Clemson hasn't looked that great so far, so that could be a close game. And then Stanford at UCLA is the last game we chose. Again, 2 high-powered teams that could determine the Pac-12 early on as well.
Okay. Which of those? I know which game you're most looking forward to. Our Big Ten homework. Jason, which one of those games are you most looking forward to?
Florida, Tennessee. Florida's won 12 in a row. This is the quote year for Tennessee fans, and it's at Rocky Top. However, Florida's coming in with the number 1 defense in the country. They're giving up less than 40 yards rushing a game, and in Tennessee, What they like to do is play action off the run, and I don't think that's going to happen. So that could be another one of those 9-6 games.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward because Tennessee's got a pretty good defense too. I think they're ranked in the top 30. But I like defensive games, and that's the one I'll be tuning into, as well as I'm an SEC homer too, but as well as Arkansas and Texas A&M.
Yeah.
I think well, back to our first question, I think Texas A&M coming from unranked to number 10 could be one of those surprise teams as well, because I think we all thought with the turmoil they had, losing 2 quarterbacks, and then the seemingly idiotic move that one of their assistant coaches made, the comment he made on Twitter about he basically one of the players that decommitted and decided to go somewhere else. He went off on him and that next day, like 3 other recruits said, "Heck, if they're gonna talk like that about us, I'm gonna go somewhere else too." So I think we all thought Texas A&M was gonna struggle this year, but they've come out of the gate and played really good football the first 3 weeks. I think Kevin Sumlin's a pretty good coach.
And Trevor Knight is a good player.
Yes.
And, he's exactly what they needed, a quarterback, a proven quarterback with experience. In that offense, that's what they needed.
I think Johnny Manziel still got some eligibility left. He only played 2 years, right? We also took a look at the Heisman Trophy, and one of the things that's interesting is before the season started, the favorite to win the Heisman Trophy, Leonard Fournette and Christian McCaffrey, were both 5-1. Everything that we heard here and all the talk on TV was all about Deshaun Watson, the Clemson quarterback, because I think even the diehard Alabama fans will admit that last year in the championship game, the best player on the field was Deshaun Watson. And I think everybody assumed coming back that but like Jason said, they got off to a slow start. Their offense did not look good against Auburn. Auburn had a Hail Mary on the last play of the game that could have beat them if they would have made the touchdown and kicked the extra point. And then who they played their second game, they didn't look all that great either. Troy, yeah. And then they scored 1,000 points last week, but that was against South Carolina State, so that one doesn't really count. But they get their big test, like Ben said, against Georgia Tech this week, and then Louisville coming to Clemson next week. I think will tell a lot about that. J.T. Barrett started the season at 10-1. Delvin Cook, the running back from Florida State, at 12-1. And you had to go down about 20 spots. I just stuck this one in here. Before the season started, Lamar Jackson was 50-1, the quarterback of Louisville. And now, as of 20 September, as of yesterday actually, Lamar Jackson is 6-5. So he's basically an odds-on favorite to win the Heisman. J.T. Barrett second at 6-1, and then Deshaun Watson and Christian McCaffrey are both 8-1. And so, basically looking at that, Lamar Jackson appears to be a lock right now. I saw on ESPN this morning, he's responsible for 18 touchdowns, and 114 of the 126 Division I schools this year do not have 18 touchdowns. In fact, they made the point that last year Missouri, they weren't a great team, but they had a winning record, scored 16 touchdowns in the entire season.
Wow.
And he's got 18 in 3 games. They're averaging 65 points a game, so they were actually below their average against Florida State. But one thing I think is really important to note is that last year, even a little bit later in the season, it was maybe week 6, week 7, Leonard Fournette was a lock for the Heisman. Everybody had already started engraving his name on it.
Yeah.
And then we saw what happened from there, and he ended up not even getting invited to New York for the trophy. It was Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, and Deshaun Watson who were the 3 finalists. So that'll be interesting to see how that comes out. There's some big games. J.T. Barrett, the quarterback at Ohio State, they still have to play Michigan and Michigan State. I think do they have both at home this year? I think I heard somewhere they have them both at home.
I would have to look at the schedule again.
Yeah, they're on the road for Penn State.
Yeah, Penn State. And so if you look at the current top 10, Alabama has to play Texas A&M, and they also play Tennessee. That's their cross division game that they always play every year. Auburn plays Georgia, Alabama plays Tennessee. I don't remember who else from the East that Alabama has this year. And then you've got Ohio State has to play Michigan. Ohio State has to play Michigan State. one of the teams that we haven't even mentioned yet, that hardly anybody's talking about, is Washington. In fact, I saw Kirk Herbstreit was on last night on SportsCenter, and they asked him which team did he know the least about, that he really was interested in, and he said Washington. He said that you know they're not, when you look at them on film, they're really good. They're solid on all three phases of the ball, and you know, they've got a really good coach.
Yeah.
Chris Peterson went there from Boise State, and I know Alabama fans will remember what happened the last time they played Boise State in a bowl game. So there's some really good games coming up that will not only determine who gets to the playoffs, but will also go a long way towards determining who wins the national championship. So let's prognosticate a little bit, so we can get it on the record, and so we can come back in early January and tell the world how brilliant we were. Right now, who do you think are going to be the 4 teams that make the playoffs?
I'm going to stick with Alabama. I'm going to go with Ohio State. I'm going to go with Houston. And I'm going to go with Stanford.
Okay.
Hmm?
Houston will be the first team from outside the Power 5 to make the playoffs.
I think what's going to happen in the ACC is that the top 3 are going to devour each other. We're going to see Louisville, Clemson, and Florida State kind of beat up on each other. So my prediction is that the ACC will kind of just beat each other up and not make it in this year. Again, that's just my prediction right now. That might change after 2 weeks from now, so we'll see.
Yeah, it could change weekly. Jason?
I like both Ohio State and Michigan getting it. I think I'm an Alabama fan, but I think after watching Ohio State Saturday night, I think that's the best team in the nation.
I think one of the things that's really scary about Ohio State is they are the youngest team in the nation. So, you know, as good as they are right now, in 2 months they're going to be even better. Because a lot of those young guys have just learned how to play, and they have a couple of cornerbacks who are really, really good.
Their team speed is phenomenal. I went and looked, I was curious because you know, you don't see team speed on a big team like that. And they have 22 players from the Southeast. So Urban Meyer is recruiting this area, and a lot of players are coming out of Florida. And, he's doing a good job of building team speed. But I like both Michigan and Ohio State. I think they'll play. One will lose, but I think one will get voted in. I like Houston, and I like Alabama.
Okay.
Roll Tide.
One of the guys in the preseason on ESPN picked Tennessee to beat Alabama during the regular season, but then said that Alabama would beat Tennessee in the SEC championship game and go to the playoffs. I actually picked Houston to go to the finals before the season started, so I'm going to stick with them. I like Ohio State. I agree with Jason. I think they're, you know, obviously Urban Meyer made a lot of contact. What was he, 12 years at Florida?
Yeah.
So, you know, he made all those contacts recruiting Florida. I can remember back when I was a kid, Anthony Carter, who was from South Florida, went to Michigan, and that was like front page news because the Big Ten schools, you know, remember the old 3 yards in the cloud of dust with Woody Hayes and Bo Schembechler, and you know they used to go to Roseville every year, and the first play of the game, Southern Cal would throw a pass, and they would be like, "What is that? Are you allowed to do that?" But yeah, the Big Ten's come a long way, and like they always say, you can't coach speed. And Ohio State definitely has that. And JT Barrett's a proven commodity quarterback. In fact, I saw an interview with Urban Meyer, and he talked about how young they were on offense. But he said that the reason why we'll be okay is because we have the best center in the country and one of the best quarterbacks in the country who have a lot of experience. So the center's calling those assignments on the line of scrimmage, and the quarterback's calling the plays. And so they have experience in a couple key spots, but they are really young. And I really think they're just going to get better. You know, we talked about John Wooden earlier this morning. He used to say when it came tournament time, there are no more freshmen. You know, so these guys will be good. Will be even better by the end of the season. I like Ohio State, Louisville, Houston, and I'm not sure who's going to win the Southeast Conference, but it's not going to be Alabama. There's no bias.
It's not going to be Auburn either.
There's no bias. Auburn can still win. Can still go 10-2, and if they go 10-2 and beat Alabama, they'll be ahead of Alabama because the first tiebreaker is head to head. In fact, Kirk Herbstreit's son, who's picked he's picked an upset of the week for 3 straight weeks, and yesterday he picked Auburn over LSU for his upset of the week, and I think he's going to be right on that. I went up and watched Alabama play last weekend against Western Kentucky. They didn't look great that game, but they did what they needed to do to win. So I'll go with Louisville, Ohio State, Houston, and the SEC champ. Anyway, we thought we'd talk a little bit about college football. We'll come back again halfway through the season when we have a little more information, a little more data to go on, and we'll see how incredibly wrong we were today, and how even more wrong we were in the preseason. But it's fun, you know. We'll put it out there and tell you what we think is going to happen, and we'll admit when we were wrong, and we'll brag a lot when we were right. So enjoy the college football this weekend. Baseball playoffs are winding down. All the teams have 11 games left in the season. In fact, in the National League, the Mets, the Cardinals, and the Giants all have the exact same record for 2 wild cards left. They're all 80 and 71. So with 11 games to go, only 2 of those are going to make the playoffs. So enjoy the baseball, enjoy the college football, enjoy the NFL, and we will see you here next week at 11:30 a.m. Central Time from the United States Sports Academy. Have a good week in sports, everyone.